Alderman. Wheeling Plan Commission meeting for Thursday, August 14th is called to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Secretary, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Dorband.
I'm here.
Commissioner Johnson, I am here. Commissioner Powers.
Here.
Commissioner Stylen.
Here.
Commissioner Vito.
Here.
Commissioner Zangara.
Here.
And Chairman Rufato.
Here. Mr. Jennings, any changes to the agenda?
No, we have no changes.
Great, thank you. 5, citizens' concerns and comments. If there is anyone here in the audience that wishes to speak on any matter other than our items for review tonight, please come forward.
We do have one.
We do have one. Hi, if you could give your name.
Marianne Ligori. I'm nervous. 105 Deborah Lane. I live in Wheeling.
Okay, great, thank you.
Hello, good evening. I am here before you this evening on behalf of the Wolf Run Estates neighborhood with 3 requests. Wolf Run, it's a beautiful, safe, peaceful, quiet neighborhood just west of the airport. We have an overabundant variety of wildlife that lives with us. There's 100 people or so. If you account for our family, that translates into the thousands. Our largest family has 9 children, so we produce there. We have some companies around us like every other section of Wheeling. Our trade-off is that where we live, it's very quiet and closed down. All weekend, all evening long. Our area has been, I don't want to say neglected and rejected for a while. That's why I'm here tonight, to open up a conversation. Sorry, I'm nervous. There's a misconception and there's a little bit of an ignorance with the fact that we live by the airport. People think, oh, it's unhealthy. That ignorance can easily be cleared up quite easily when you have full understanding of the environment around you, the human body, its immune system, how invaders affect things on a cellular level, a molecular level. We do not have issues with that. I personally, for the last 8 years, have dealt with something and I have scrutinized over this environment, land, water, air, one of the best areas of Wheeling. I'm born and raised in Wheeling. Bought a house 5 minutes from my parents. So we're surrounded with large trees, very quiet, no cell tower, power lines. We're far from the train. We're actually far from the runway. And when Atlantic built their buildings, it's actually very quiet. There's no issues with there. It's a beautiful, loving community. We wouldn't have thriving animals building homes. We wouldn't have all of that if there was an issue. And if you've ever met our children, they're all supersized. All of the children are supersized. So one day you will meet them. So I have 3 requests. The first request is to have yourselves discuss, and Mr. Jennings as well, and write up for approval, or present to the Board of Trustees for a vote, an amendment to the Village Wheeling Comprehensive Plan. An amendment that would change our neighborhood status, the zoning status, so that we can finally be seen as residents of Wheeling. So the zoning request is changing from R1A to R1. This request comes twofold. First of all, so we can be treated and planned for appropriately, so we can be taken care of, our tax money working for us, with the same exact respect that the entire community, the residential sections, they're afforded. And 2, to stop the continued neglect, rejection that we've actually experienced. I can elaborate, I'm not here to be negative. Don't want to turn this into, you saw what happened with the Old Town Inn in Mount Prospect, and don't want to do this. So I'm bringing this to you tonight for these requests. I want to first talk about the zoning. We have our own zoning. We are the only area. There's over 150 zoning areas in Wheeling. I stopped counting at 150. We are the only one that has our own rules or no rules. We're definitely segregated. We always have been. We were annexed into the village early 2000. So I wanted to fill you in on that one. So if you look at the zoning on Appendix A2, Andrew, where it shows residential, commercial, industrial, when you say special use permit, or whatever, we're not even included in that area. So we are thought about, because in January, when you were doing the decision on the cannabis dispensary, we were in there as no, can't go. So with the zoning R1A, we're not considered to be a future residential area. We're not envisioned to be residents. And frankly, after River Mill was placed at the end of the airport off of Hens, I just thought things changed. This was 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. It was conceptualized mid-90s, beginning of 2000, when this came into place. So things have changed over 20 years. We are not recommended to be a tear down or new construction. Like 12th Street, we did the new construction. Those homes are beautiful over there. So I'm going to have some financial issues with my home if and when I ever come time to sell it. It's a beautiful lot. I have over 20 mature trees. I have almost an acre. What family would want to ever buy from me when it comes up as not going to be a residential area ever? I'm never going to be able to sell my home to a family who's going to want to lay roots here. The only planning that was done for the area was the accumulation of tax money with the TIF, and that tax money to be used in the plan to kick me out. So it's my money to kick myself out. It just doesn't make sense. Our contributions to the pot, our fiscal responsibilities, as a homeowner, it's never in our favor. So we contribute quite a bit. We pay between $7,000 and $9,000 taxes a year per home without receiving any of the services. If you Google any of the addresses, within the first 60 seconds of Google, 3 pages, every single one of these addresses come up as being blighted, beyond repair, continue to deteriorate without government involvement. It's just yet another reminder, don't buy from these people. But then if you Google Earth, our homes, and you see us as the world sees us, it's a completely different story that's just beautiful. And even since Google, at 2012 pictures, we still have 3 new roads, 4 new roofs, a couple of new building structures, over $200,000 in backyard upgrades in our small little community. And if there's something you didn't like, you could just put a fence up like you did on 83 against Dunhurst. Years ago, a trucking company was allowed to be put in there, backed up to a residential area, operate 24/7, pollution, noise, with little to no monetary gain to the village of Wheeling. When you're doing a trucking company, there's no manufacturing taxes, etc. I'm sorry.
Ms. Ligori,
Yes.
you'll get 5 more minutes.
Thank you, I appreciate
Okay,
that.
that's it.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
There was an EPA violation with the Berry tank at ABF 6 weeks ago. There was construction over the course of 2 days. I'm assuming they dug it up and pulled it out. I contacted Mr. Jennings. I let him know. I let the trustees know as well. It was a Berry tank, shouldn't have been. There was an EPA violation. I actually called the realtor, said, hey, please pull this out. I'm assuming they did. I'm bringing this up for a reason because now there's a company running out of there. There is a company running out of this same lot. And you scrutinize over everything when you're doing the planning commission. There are serious concerns with, there's a barbed wire fence, besides the weeds protruding from the lot. And you guys take a 360 look at everything all over Wheeling, and I don't understand why this is not the case here. For Viking Driving School, honking the horn at 8 in the morning, they're running, and I'm not understanding why that's being allowed. Any other place in Wheeling, we wouldn't allow to run a business unless it was scrutinized over. After listening to the Wheeling Police Department, we cleaned up our own areas. We assumed it to be village-owned. We put good 30 hours in there cleaning up these areas. All of these are negative and offenses, and it's the staff is not allowed to plan for us. They're not allowed to see us as people living here. Hollywood has 15,000 feet of new water main planned for. Morse Avenue was moved up ahead of time because there was a surplus in funds, without even a thought to us, as my property taxes have gone from $2,000 to over $8,000 in just a few short years. We're the wealthiest nation in history. If we cannot provide infrastructure, there's an issue with that. The comprehensive plan, we qualified because we're surrounded by industry like everyone else. Then we put at Millbrook Point down Wolf Road, the townhomes over at Foster and Willow. So what I'm trying to say is, and we were unincorporated, so beyond Wheeling's say on how maintenance should be, things have changed. We're now incorporated. We are just like every other area of Wheeling.
You have 3 more minutes to
Thank
get
you,
your
sir.
2 other points
Okay.
to us.
The active transportation plan, the two last TIFs, they still using the cut and paste language from 20 years ago, not conducive to the area. I know there's no plan for us, but I can't go with this chokehold for the next 15, 20 years of being mistreated or not having the tax money come back to us. So I'd appreciate your consideration for the amendment, the zone changing, and one last issue. Again, we're not considered for one of these pocket parks. Along Wheeling, along Wolf Road, all of the other plans moving forward since 2000 has that section as green space area. There's a section right in front of the Wolf Run Estates area. It's an entrance to our town, and we would appreciate consideration for that area. I noticed that wasn't on for consideration. It is village-owned property. Village, they trim it, they trim the grass and the trees. So would appreciate that and fix the stuff with the ABF trucking company. I would appreciate it. Thank you for your time this evening. I really, truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. You still have 1 minute and 45 seconds.
I do appreciate it. I understand you're strict in your funding. Last time I was here just defending myself, and I was this, and that's not me personally. I was mean to someone
I know.
I didn't even know, so I
Quite all right.
appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Thank you. Andrew, we'll take these, I assume you will, number of things that here, especially the company running, not knowing anything or not knowing any history, I assume you will investigate that.
We actually are investigating.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Number 6, consent items. Docket number SCBA 14-24, Strahn's Deli, 411 East Dundee Road, appearance approval of a wall sign. Before I ask for consent, Mr. Stylen, Commissioner Stylen asked me a question. He had a question to ask, so Commissioner Stylen, I didn't feel we had to take it off of consent.
Andrew, the location of that sign, is it purely on the petitioner's facade area?
They have I don't think I have the floor plan, but their unit goes, if you look at the arrow here, their unit goes back to about here, and it goes sort of at a weird diagonal behind the other unit. So yes, this is their facade area. We didn't employ the 20-foot minimum rule in this case. We felt that this was clearly over their entrance.
And when you measured the facade frontage, I think your report said that it was 20 some odd feet. Was that linear across the front or on the diagonal?
We did not remeasure this time. I don't remember. It's been a little while since we actually did.
It just seems like, is there any way that that sign could be larger? I mean, it seemed like it just barely fit in the area that you stated in your report.
We can certainly work with them. If they are under, I believe because of the tagline on this, they could get the 50% bonus. If you apply the 50% bonus on top of the 20-foot minimum and the sign still fits side to side, sure, but there's probably a limit to how much money they want to spend on the sign. We can, if the commission would allow it, we could work as a condition of approval to increase the sign to the maximum allowable.
Yeah, because I really think that the sign is going to be pretty small. It's tucked away in the back corner of that building. It's going to be difficult to see, if there's any way that we can measure on the diagonal versus because it is an awkward shape, that maybe we could give them a few extra square feet. I'd really like to see if that might be possible.
I think we'd be okay with that condition.
And the condition we worded that the sign area may be increased to the maximum allowable by code.
Yes, that's good. So we have a motion with a condition?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? And I don't-
Sure.
Andrew, the first time we saw the sign, the delicatessen was in, that lettering was all white, and now it's white on a black background. I have a really hard time making that out. Is there a reason why they switched to black?
On the capsule,
Yeah.
I would imagine for contrast purposes, white on black actually does visually show up really well traditionally. It could be the graphic itself. It's difficult to convey in a graphic sometimes. We can certainly work with them on it. If they want to make the letters in the same font a little bit bolder. It is difficult, though, to convey
Okay.
sometimes what a sign is going to look like in the end.
That's probably the same font they use for the Deca, right?
Yeah.
At least the D is.
It's likely.
Yeah.
Most likely.
And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The sign company has done other script signs in this shopping center in the past, and we've worked with them on that, so we can certainly talk to them about it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve with the added condition.
Great. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Steinle, second by Commissioner Powers. Mr. Secretary?
Commissioner Stylin?
Yes.
Commissioner Powers?
Yes.
Commissioner Dorban?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson says yes. Commissioner Vito?
Yes.
Commissioner Zangara?
Yes.
And Chairman Raffato?
Yes. Thank you. Items for review, docket number SCBA 14-25, high-tech PDR 1030 South Milwaukee Avenue, appearance approval of a freestanding sign. Mr. Jennings?
Thank you. Just before we get started on this one, the reason that this particular item was placed on the regular review instead of consent, there are two reasons, actually. One, the Planning Commission, as a policy, prefers for signs with new landscape areas to go under regular items for review. The second reason was that staff, in the staff report, had noted a need for an interpretation of a particular section of the code. Just in reviewing that today, I reviewed the definition of changeable copy area and found that it does specifically mention the length of display. So technically by the code, as long as this display is changed more than once an hour, it is not a static display, and changeable copy area by the code is intended for static display. The section of the code that would apply then would be the EMC section, the Electronic Message Center section. The end result of all this is your interpretation really isn't requested at this point. We believe that the sign as designed with the percentage of display area would meet the code without question. With that, I would open it up to the petitioner.
Is the petitioner here? If you could state your name and business address into the microphone very clearly so we can have it.
Okay, my name is Denny Konovalchik. I'm president DK Sign and Graphics. Address?
Yes.
28 W500 Leicester Street, West Chicago, Illinois 60185.
Great, thank you. So if you want to explain the new sign, the floor is yours.
Yeah, this is freestanding sign with electronic message center, with double-faced sign, double-face top portion Lexan panels with vinyl graphics, and base for the sign we plan to make with aluminum construction, painted aluminum, whole base. I mean cover. Talking about the cover, gray color cover of the sign. Just like decorative part of the sign.
Is that all you have to share? Yep, okay, great.
Just a quick clarification. In the graphic that we have on the screen right now, the sign itself is, you're looking south at this sign. So the display portion of the sign is toward the building.
Yes,
That is the intention for the sign, not toward the street.
to the building.
Okay, so as shown is the.
Right, right. Mhm.
Okay, great, thank you. We'll start with Commissioner Dorban.
Thank you. I guess what we need to clarify first, according to my packet, is the sign consists of double blade style pylon support and aluminum side cabinet. So we need to, what is it exactly that we have to clarify the material? Is that what you're looking for?
The
Because
material,
it does say aluminum, so I'm
the pylon itself, the construction of the pylon itself, if you could just elaborate on that.
Is a welded construction, steel welded construction, like we always did, and aluminum, top aluminum and a back aluminum.
So the two posts are new posts? You're not able to salvage one?
We're gonna use the same post, the existing one, for the sign cabinet and message center. A second one,
So that's this would be the existing post?
existing one, right,
So the sign is centered over the existing?
right, and left one,
This guy?
yeah, this is for structure of the covers.
Okay, so both of those are steel? welded,
Steel,
And then
right.
the wrap around the pylons? How is
Exactly.
that constructed?
Yep,
The wrap around the pylon itself is constructed of what material?
still welded.
This is also, the gray is a,
Gray, only outside, only outside covers is aluminum,
okay.
so,
And then the reveal in here is, the reveal in the aluminum is also
right,
aluminum?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. The other question I had was regarding the changeable sign. And are you saying that the 33% would be permissible then?
Yes, yes.
Okay, although you said everywhere else we've had it as 25, so you're saying that,
So what I was attempting to say in the staff report is the changeable copy rule is 25%. What I had thought was the case was that the commission would need to make an interpretation as to whether or not electronic message centers should be under the changeable copy rule. I had not seen the very specific language in that definition of changeable copy until today. With that definition, this is strictly an appearance review with the normal criteria for electronic message centers.
okay. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to go back just to the wrapping of the aluminum. So we have the two posts, correct? With the one existing, you're putting another one in there. So are you building like a steel frame around there, so, and then you're going to attach the aluminum onto that?
Exactly.
Okay, that's fine. And then the height of the sign, is it basically the same height as the sign that's currently there? I just was curious. Hard to tell, but that's fine. If you don't know, that's okay.
I think it's lower, a little bit lower, like maybe 2 foot lower.
Foot and a half, I think.
Yeah,
Something like that.
right, 2.5.
And then I was concerned with the pylon, but I went out to the site, like sight lines for turning and that, it's way off the street, so I don't have a concern about that. I just want to make a comment, the landscape plan was, around that sign was awesome. And I really appreciated the inclusion of the plantings, the pictures of it, so that was really well done. So other than that, I have nothing further.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. I think we've covered everything that I had. I think it's a great-looking sign. It's going to be nice to see it.
Commissioner
Yeah.
Stylin?
Thank you, Mr.
No, I
Chairman.
was done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. By my rule of thumb, it looks like the individual panel sections will be about 2 feet high or so.
The middle section, up to, I mean, you're talking about, yeah, it's 2 feet, yeah.
And the landscaping around it, do you have any idea how high that landscaping will get? I mean, will it be about 2 feet, 2.5 feet, maybe even more? 2.5 feet, maybe?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe less, maybe around.
I'm just wondering, the bottom panel, is that going to sit flush with the ground? You know, I'm just wondering if we should build a little something around it to protect the sign a little bit from the plants and weed whackers and stuff like that, you know, some kind of a base that, you know, I just don't know how high the planting materials would get, so.
Usually if we build a sign, something like that, we use like 3 inches here between ground and sign. So like the distance.
So you're saying it would be, or you'd fill it in with some kind of base around it?
No, like I said, it's 3 inches between ground and
In the bottom,
And the bottom
start
of
of
the
the bottom
sign, right.
panel?
approximately. So, because sometimes surface is not, I mean, ground is not like
Right.
even. So,
Something like that. Do you know if the landscaping is irrigated? Anybody? I mean,
For the building?
yeah,
You know, I would have to double check that. The site consists of a new building and an old building. I don't remember off the top of my head how we resolved the irrigation on this one.
okay. I mean, if we did call for irrigation, I'd like to make sure that that area around the sign is covered by the irrigation. I think the plantings would really enjoy having some consistent water.
I would agree.
That's my only concern. I think the sign will look nice. It's a nice-looking sign, so thank you.
Commissioner Zangara?
Thank you. I guess the only question I really have is, why is the sign closer towards the building and not flip-flopped out to the street more?
it's a good question.
I mean, I just think coming down the street, the sign's so far back, you'd want the sign.
This drawing is made in the beginning by architect. He worked with my client,
Okay?
and he create this design with my client, so.
Okay. Well, I mean, that was my only suggestion is, you want your sign closer to the street so people see it more, because I don't know, coming down, if there's landscaping gets bigger, that sign's going to be hidden further back. So I think you'd want that to really flip-flop the sign.
Yeah, flip it, yeah.
That would be my recommendation, but that's really all I have, is just to flip that sign to make the sign closer to the street. But that's all I have. Unless,
Is that possible with,
I think that if the client, in this case, the business, can confirm their intention and it meets the code, that I don't think as a staff we'd have any issue allowing it to be flipped. If they take a look at it and decide they want to flip it, I don't think we would have an issue. I think the only question would be if the reason that they went that direction was the sign setback requirement.
If you like to flip the base, the sign stay in the same position. top
Because
one.
it's centered over the existing.
Because we like to use
you
existing.
can't move it. You can't move the sign.
That's true.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
using the
because same-
existing,
support.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same thing. And we got
You'd be flipping the base, not the sign.
not sign, yeah, because we like to use same electric power, existing one. So,
Andrew, on like this drawing, it looks like the sign is closer to the street.
Yeah, I agree.
On the landscape plan.
Yeah.
Like I said, we would not have any issue flipping the blade on the other side. You know, if the sign area meets the code and the setback meets the code, and your client decides they'd like to reverse the blade.
Or landscaping plan? Yeah,
Sure.
I think it's possible, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I quickly looked up. that-
Microphone? Your microphone?
Sorry. I quickly looked up, and it appears that several of these plantings are about 3 feet height when they get to their highest point, if that helps. Anybody?
Thank you. So, were you done, Commissioner?
Yeah.
And I do have a question about that, but I'll go to Commissioner Vito first.
I have nothing. I
Thank
think
you.
the sign looks nice.
Thank you. So, to your point, Commissioner Dorban, and then Commissioner Stan, what you were talking about, I don't think a weed whacker would get close to the sign because you're going to have all the plantings, and they're going to be high enough anyway. I'm not certain, I wasn't sure where you were going with that. So, and 3 feet is going to be pretty high, and luckily the address is high enough. Normally, we get them way at the bottom, so that's good. Okay. I have nothing, but I think we have a couple of conditions.
As it is right now, based on the discussion, I've got two. Number one, that the sign area is added to the landscape irrigation system if the site is irrigated. And number two, that the sign support or blade can be reversed at the preference of the business, provided that it meets the code.
Anything else?
If they reverse that, are they going to have to shift the landscape over then too?
Not by much.
You know what? I think that we can certainly work with them on that. As it is right now, it certainly does look like there is landscaping under the overhang.
Yeah,
which would mean that,
that's
whoever
what-
drew the landscape drawing certainly thought that it was reversed.
Right.
So, I think we can work with both the sign company, business, landscaper to shift these elements around.
Great. Okay, good. So we have a motion. Do we have a motion for docket
So
number?
moved.
Second? Do I have a second?
A second.
A motion by Commissioner Dorban, second by Commissioner Johnson. Mr. Secretary.
Commissioner Dorban?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson is yes. Commissioner Powers?
Yes.
Commissioner Stylen?
Yes.
Commissioner Vito?
Yes.
Commissioner Zangara?
Yes.
And Chairman Rafado.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
You'll have one thing to sign.
While you're up there, did you have anything that you wanted to say about the deli?
Well, Delhi, yeah.
Is that your sign too?
Yeah. So, I know you got question, why is the black background and white letters? My client like to match DECA sign.
Okay.
That's why he chose to put black background and white lettering in the same font to match freestanding sign with channel letters
Yep.
for the shops.
Do you think that he would be open to increasing the size of the sign if he was allowed to?
I don't think so. For me,
Yeah, for you it'd be fine. Right,
for me it's fine.
Did I print too? Is that- Okay, you can go ahead and sign.
Thank
Thank you.
It's true, for him it would be fine. Let's do that.
It's a big file.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
And sheet, probably.
Oh, yeah, you know, it is a big file.
Okey-dokey.
Calling docket number PC 1411 Chamber Park, 131 North Wolf Road, minor site plan and appearance review of park improvements. Mr. Jennings.
Thank you. Mr. Raffel, if you could come up. There were a couple of staff memos placed in front of you just prior to the start, but I'd like to go ahead and have Mr. Raffel go through the proposed improvements, and then we can get into some of the staff comments.
Great. Okay. Mr. Raffel, if you give your name and business address, that'd be great.
I'm Larry Raffel. I'm the Superintendent of Planning at the Wheeling Park District, 333 West Dundee Road here in Wheeling, 60090.
Thank you. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. As you can see by our application in the cover letter, the Wheeling Park District has found a tremendous demand for a new sport called pickleball. If any of you are familiar with it, it's been described as a combination of tennis, badminton, and ping pong. It's typically played by seniors on a smaller court.
Is that seniors in high school, sir? Or?
Seniors around my age,
oh, okay.
50 plus. It's a smaller court than tennis. It's about half the size of tennis. The nets are lower, the paddles are smaller. It's a plastic ball, almost like a wiffle ball. And we found a tremendous demand for this sport, and we've been hosting it in our community recreation center for the most part. And what we found is that it's a fast-growing sport. We're finding more of a demand, and we've been looking for an outdoor location for this sport. Currently, we have no outdoor location in Wheeling for this. If during the summer months, when they're not playing in our community recreation center, they go over to Prospect Heights to play. So the Park District did a kind of an analysis and a study to determine the best location for this. And we looked first at Heritage Park here. Since it's undergoing all the renovations, we thought maybe we can look for a spot there. We examined a couple locations and just could not find a spot there that worked, either because of the existing floodway or all the utilities running through it or the large amount of asphalt that we currently have in the park. We then turned to Chamber Park, and we looked at this park, and we found that from the existing features that it has, it's a good fit for pickleball. What we're looking to do is a 6-court complex, which in the scheme of things sounds like a lot, but it's basically about the size of 2 basketball courts. So we looked at Chamber Park, and you kind of see what you have there in the existing conditions is what we used as kind of our site analysis and inventory. So we looked at Chamber Park. Basically, we have parking in place, we have restrooms, we have storage, we have a drinking fountain, and then on top of that, we've also got the senior center adjacent to it, the Greek American Rehabilitation Center, and a retirement, that's the retirement home, and then apartments nearby. So we really determined that the best location was Chamber Park. Then after determining location, we looked at a couple of different concepts within the park. And we looked at some different locations, and we really came up with the location that we showed in our proposal is really the optimal location for the pickleball courts. It's adjacent to the storage, adjacent to the restrooms. It's separate from the parking lot, so we don't have like an overall giant expanse of asphalt and concrete. And because of the former use of the park, which that's where the old pool was, it's generally flat in that area. It slopes up, but in that area it's generally flat. The slope is minimal. So we looked at that location and really determined that that was the best location for the pickleball courts. And then how do we design those to kind of get the orientation and all the features that we need? And you can see we've designed them north-south, which is the orientation that we like. This particular court would have a removable net system. And when I say removable, it would be, the post would be placed in sleeves, and then when not in use, they'd be stored in that storage building. Pickleball, the way we operate pickleball is basically it's a paid sport. The users pay a fee for it, and then they're allowed to play. And we monitor that along with some help from a gentleman who is bringing the sport to the Midwest for the most part. And he's really gathered a lot of users. So it's removable. So when the sport is not being played, the posts and the nets and any equipment that we're using or we're providing would be kept in storage. So you could see the pickleball courts up at the northern end. On the north and the south ends would be 8-foot high chain link coated fence with windscreen. And then we've also proposed evergreen trees between the courts and the residential properties. And we looked at a couple of different types. Right now we're conceptuals, but thinking of arborvitaes, upright junipers, or maybe even in eastern pine. And then we'd have benches along there for the users to sit in. The center line you see would be a small net, more than anything else, that separates the two courts. Typically in pickleball, you wouldn't have something like this in tennis. You wouldn't have back-to-back courts without a complete fence between them. Pickleball, because the ball moves a whole lot slower, we're able to have smaller fence, and those would be simply 4-foot high fenced with gaps in between them, between the north and the south courts, I guess you would say. And then on the east and the west side would be 4-foot high fences, because again, you typically don't see the wiffle ball or the pickleball flying over the fence. If it goes, it usually is kind of dribbles and gets stopped by the fence. So that's basically the pickleball concept. We're also proposing a kind of a rehabilitation or a reconstruction of the existing parking lot. The outline you see is basically the outline of the existing parking, but if you can go back to the existing conditions, you can see that parking lot is striped poorly, it's crumbling in certain areas, it's literally falling apart in certain areas, and it just needs to be redone. We've had the discussion with the village engineer on how best to approach it, and the intent is to strip off and grind the top 2 layers, which would be the top 2 inches, which would be the surface course, and replace that with proper drainage, because right now it doesn't drain properly, and then restripe it. If you've been out to that park lately, it's restriped in a manner that one side has probably about a 36-foot drive aisle, and the other one probably has about a 22-foot drive aisle. So the idea is to restripe that. The intention also is to remove the basketball hoops that are there right now, so it would be strictly a parking lot, and we'd place landscaped islands in there as well. And you can kind of see that, and then some additional landscaping. We'd also stripe that for the handicap spots, and then there'd be a sidewalk at the north end to provide handicap access to ultimately to the park in general, but also to the pickleball courts. A couple of things to note on our intentions right now. We have received a proposal to do soil borings on this, so we're not quite sure. We know what that pool was filled in with, but we don't know exactly how. So to move forward, we really need to do soil borings, and we've received a proposal for that, and our intent is to do that first. And then we've also contacted MWRD regarding any type of permits, and I think that's reflected in the memo that you just received from the village engineer. And we would definitely get some type of documentation from MWRD that no permit is required. And in fact, they actually require us completing a document to tell us that we don't need a permit, and we would do that. So it's on file with them as well. I think I've given you all the information I have right now, but I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission has.
We will start with Commissioner Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Antor, you gave us a memo. I received a memo. We received a memo when we came in. Can you explain to me the location of the fire lane that you guys are proposing, where that would be?
Okay. Basically, what we're looking for is due to the fact that there's 2 structures at the end of this driveway that comes from the rebuilt parking lot to the pickleball courts. It runs north and south.
Okay.
And it's on the west side of the pickleball courts. Since that's the only access into those 2 structures for the fire apparatus, of trying to limit public access to use that area so that people don't drive down there and, say, I'm going to go park by the pickleball court and block the roadway. Another alternative, if you chose not to call it a fire lane, was just to have the park district sign it with no entry, authorized vehicles only, or something like that, where it's not, quote, as intrusive as a fire lane, which would still get the point across that it's not a drive access for additional parking.
Okay.
If I could just add to that, one thing we were considering doing is, because it's not a drive lane at all, is putting a drop-down bollard at the kind of the north west corner of the parking lot where you see that one tree, so that people physically could not drive their vehicles down that lane.
I think that we would prefer some kind of signage only, because that is the only access point to the storage building and then the church and the restrooms.
Okay, and we would do that too. We don't want people we don't want anything other than emergency vehicles driving on that lane.
But we see some potential for that happening with
Yeah.
the increased usage of the site.
Yeah.
Okay. I see some new landscaping on this plan. Will you be coming back to us with a landscape plan as to what plants you're actually going to put in those indicated locations?
If we're required to, we would. I mean, we'd have no problem with that. I mean, as part of the permit process, or?
I think with the, you're in a, right now, I think you're kind of in the area of a fairly minor tree planting. We know from what you have just indicated that there's maybe 3 potential screen-type trees for the north end of the courts, and then you've listed a couple of shade trees as well. So I think that our staff is certainly comfortable with that level of detail. If you'd like to add the range of possibilities as a condition of approval, I think that we could work with them when they go to construction.
Yeah, we'd be happy to work with you and, present any type of landscape design.
Okay.
The other thing, note just on this is the work on the pickleball courts, we intend to do in-house. The parking lot will go out to bid.
Okay. Regarding the parking lot, I was there, I think, Tuesday afternoon, and on the east side, there was a lot of standing water in there. So I assume, is the parking lot itself, is that in any kind of a floodway right now? I'm just kind of curious.
It's not.
But I assume when you redo the parking lot, you'll do your best to make sure that you get the drainage, and that what seems to be a problem on the east side, you'll try to do your best to take care of that so that doesn't happen anymore?
Yeah, we'll do that, and I'm sure that your engineer is going to make sure that we've graded this properly for our permits. The reason that particularly east end is so degraded is because the area just east of that is higher, and the water just drains right into that.
Okay, that's fine. And will this parking area here, I know there's no curbs there now, are you planning to put curbs in there or just leave it without the curbs?
We are going to leave it without the curbs. We contacted the village engineer when we first started with that, and he said because this is simply just a reconstruction of existing parking lot, we wouldn't be required to put in any new curbs.
Okay. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Johnson.
On the curb thing, the picture that's up there now, it looks like you've got 2 planting islands at the end of the center. So is that curb there or just
No, we wouldn't have any
all in
curb.
the asphalt?
Yeah, it would be it'd literally be like literally a cut in the asphalt with some type of edging to keep the base grade below the asphalt from sloughing off.
Okay. What's the surface of the pickleball court?
The surface is concrete, and then it's color-coded. And if you like, I have a picture that I brought, and I can show the commission what we intend the final product to look like.
Sure. If you have it on you.
But anyways, it's concrete, color-coded, and it really does look very similar. It's very similar to a tennis court, the color. striping, everything, it's just smaller. Everything is just smaller in size, and that's the lines, everything.
Look at all those young people playing, too. Okay, one last question. You said you were going to take out the basketball nets that were there. Do they get a lot of use? I mean, are we upsetting people that use them a lot?
I don't think they do get a lot of use. The pickleball courts, as we noted in our letter, we intend to use as multi-purpose courts, but right now, we haven't decided if we're going to be putting basketball hoops at the new pickleball courts.
I imagine if it's a problem, you're going to get feedback from the local residents that, hey, you took our basketball hoops.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they get a whole lot of use, to be honest with you.
Okay. Other than that, looks good.
Mr. Steinle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you guys know, I'm a director of the Wheeling Historical Society, which occupies 3 buildings at the Chamber Park location. We're associated with the Park District itself, so I think I should probably abstain from participating in this discussion. Thank you.
Commissioner Zangara.
Thank you. First of all, I played this pickleball 20 years ago at Wheeling High School.
Really?
Really. And I just had a conversation this past weekend. I ran into a teacher downtown. I would skip my lunch hour to play him. That's how good he was. So young kids can play this game too. But a couple questions I did have is, I guess this picture actually shows it, and that was one of the questions I had, was, first question is with these benches. Are you going to have a cover over the benches, some kind of protection from sun?
Right now, it's not in the plan. My guess is that at some point, yes, we would.
Okay.
I mean, it's going to be asked for. The thought was to try to get the shade from the trees nearby, but my thought is that really quickly we'd add shade over the benches.
Okay, that was number one. Number two is, you talk about the fences, but would it be wise to have a gate? You said you take down the stuff. If you take down the stuff, now it's just a blank surface for kids to skateboard, rollerblade. If we have it closed off with a gate, why there's no one using it, no one could technically get in there.
Yeah. We've had that discussion at a staff level, and I don't think we're quite at that point yet of how the fencing is going to work. That's something we would definitely consider, is literally having a gate and having the entire thing fenced off.
Okay. And then my last, well, I want 2 more questions. One is there any consideration of putting lights?
No.
No.
Not lighted play. If the situation arose where we needed like some type of safety light for that area, we would consider, but we're not considering any lighted play.
Okay, and then lastly, my question would be with the parking lot, is there any intent, I haven't driven by there, any intent to do anything with the front half of the parking lot, or is that in good enough condition, or is there a plan to redo the whole parking lot?
No, that's in good enough condition.
Okay.
We don't need to do that now.
Okay, but like I said, I mean, I think it's it's been out on the West Coast forever,
Yeah.
and I'll be interested to go out there and play, but just like I said, I mean, talked about the landscaping, I'm just more concerned with, like you said, take stuff down. I've seen it with our tennis courts around here, when they're unoccupied, kids go in there and, I don't want to say destroy them, but wear and tear them pretty good. So, just a recommendation.
Yeah, that's a good, it's something we've talked about internally too.
And with the covering, I've dealt with this with Little League, you get these hot days, if you're talking senior citizens, they're sitting on a bench, sun's beating down on them, so.
Yeah.
Just a couple of recommendations, that's all.
Except it is a 4-foot fence, and most young kids could probably jump over that anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's 8 foot high on the 2 sides. The front and back, it's 8 foot high.
Don't just ignore the ones on the side where it's 4 feet.
Let's climb over the 8-foot fence instead.
I'm trying. Make it an 8-foot fence.
Exactly.
So,
Commissioner Dorban.
Thank you. Well, you sent me to the internet to find out what pickleball was, because I plead my ignorance. But I did find out what pickleball was. I also found out how it got its name, and I was looking up on the court, so I did. You've educated me, and thank you very much for sending me to learn something new. That's all I have.
Commissioner Vito.
Yeah, thanks. You said that there's an outdoor court in Prospect Heights?
They use, it's not specific to pickleball. They use a tennis court setup in Prospect Heights that they're using right now. There's no specific outdoor pickleball courts in kind of the Wheeling, Prospect Heights area.
And does that take away from the people who are paying here in Wheeling? Do they, I guess, flee to go there in the summer months?
That's where they go. I mean, it's the only place for them to play.
Okay. Oh, so there's no, you said it was at the community center here, though, that they play indoors?
Yeah, I should have said, in the fall and winter. In the summertime, since we're using our gymnasium for all of our programs, we don't have any pickleball facilities in Wheeling.
Okay. And what's like the volume of people that you have who are in this, if it's a league, if it's a paid league, like how many people are you talking about? What kind of fees are you generating from it?
We have about 4,000 participants per year. And that doesn't mean 4,000 different people, but, you know, if somebody's playing twice a week, they're counted twice, you know. So we have about 4,000 paid participants per year. And I think the fee is like $2 a time. And so it's a pretty big revenue for the Park District, and it's just growing. What I've been told is that from 2012 to 2013, it literally doubled from 2,000 to 4,000 participants. In the summer months, we don't have the place for them to play, so we experience a big drop-off in play during the summer months because there's really no facility.
And how would you collect revenue in the outdoor courts? Would that be a fee pay as well?
Mm-hmm. We have, right now, we have an organizer who organizes the sports, coordinates it, makes sure, the teams are set up and all that. He collects the money and gives it to the Park District. As this gets larger, the Park District would probably start doing that on our own, where we'd actually have somebody out monitoring, collecting the fees, opening the storage room to, bring the nets out, bring the equipment out. So that's how we kind of, it's definitely a monitored sport. For the most part, it's a scheduled sport. We're not going to leave the nets up so people can just come out and play at any time. The nets would come up and down based on when it's programmed to play.
Okay. And looking at the photo, there's like a chalked outline, looks like maybe a soccer field or something, or maybe it's just a bad photo.
I think there was. I think at one point, I don't know how old this Google Earth photo is. At times we've marked that for soccer, but now that we're going to have Heritage Park opening, we don't need that for any type of soccer play. We did want to keep, though, that's a good point, because we did want to keep some of the green space there so you can just have drop-in. Like if kids just want to hit a baseball or kick a soccer ball around, there is that green space still to do that.
Yeah, and that's the basic basis of my concern, because I drive down Wolf Road every day from work and I see, kids in those apartments sitting there on the west side of Wolf Road kicking a ball on the street, and I think that neighborhood probably is more conducive to a soccer field myself, but I'm going to defer to the Park District and the board. If you've done your due diligence and you think that this is the area to do it, I'm not going to second guess it. That's my only concern with it, and I wouldn't vote against it on that. But if there is some reconsideration of the issue, that would be my concern.
Yeah, we just have not found that area to be used much. I mean, I've seen I'll see like a dad and a son playing catch, and that's about it every time I've been by there.
Okay.
People, we find a lot of walkers in the park, people walking their dogs, people going to the Historical Society or events at the Chamber Church, but we just haven't seen a lot of use in that open space, which is a little bit surprising.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Is that it?
That's all I have.
Great, thank you. So, taking on what Commissioner Vito was talking about, you said it's a controlled sport. So you have to make a reservation to use one of the courts? Is that how it's going to work? Or you go over there and somebody's there and will set up the court for you? How is that?
Yeah, right now, the way it works is that somebody is there, and they literally set up the courts, and they set up almost like they set up the teams, who's playing. It's more of a drop-in where people play, but they're not necessarily on a specific team, or, you don't have two people who come to play doubles, or four people to come play doubles together. Right now, we have somebody who organizes the entire sport. So you don't have to sign up in advance, you just have to show up, you pay, and you're placed with a partner on the court. As it gets more and more use, we probably will think of something more in terms of reservations, a system where people can have sign up for play with different teams, that sort.
And what are the hours going to be?
Right now, the hours are typically, they play Tuesdays and Thursdays, like 9 to noon or something. And our intention is to start with those hours right now and kind of determine how, the level play. Definitely will not be playing in the evening. But we're going to see how the sport grows to determine the hours of play.
Yeah, because you have no lighting, so you
Yeah.
can do anything at night. Have you considered, you have a big piece of property there, and you have paths to the other buildings to the west. Have you considered a walking path around this that not only connects the parking lot to the pickle courts, but something that people could actually walk around? You have that potential future connection to the senior center to the north, and then you have one to the retirement home. Why couldn't you extend that around and then connect it to the paths that are where the Historical Society has their buildings?
Yeah, we actually did probably 8 or 9 years ago, we did like a schematic master plan of this entire park, and we did include a path that kind of loops, like you're saying, it would go along the east end of the property. And my guess is that when we further develop this park, and we'll most likely come before you again when we do that type of work, we'd have a looped path that would take you all the way around the park, even on the east end.
I mean, what an ideal spot for the seniors, the senior center,
Yeah.
to have someplace to walk that's not in a street.
Yeah, well, I think that right now the paths are potential future
Right.
connections.
Right.
And I think another future connection would be kind of a path from north to south on the east end of the property.
Okay, because that would be
Yeah.
ideal. And I would truly like to see that. I'm not making a condition of this, but I would like to see that going
Yeah.
forward. Now, you talked about having to work with MWRD and our engineers because you are putting a lot of concrete here. Do you think there's going to be a potential for a need for a detention?
I think.
You have to displace that water somewhere.
I think the preliminary indication from MWRD is no.
Really?
What our village engineer is asking for is either documentation of the waiver or the approval itself, one or the other.
Because you do have some single-family homes to the north, and I'm sure the last thing they want to do is get flooded in any manner with something like this being built.
But one thing we definitely will do when we build this is, we have to grade it so that any runoff stays on our property.
Right, yep.
And we'll do that. And again, we spoke to MWRD and basically said we do not need any type of detention or compensatory storage, and, we'll verify that with them and provide that information to the village engineer.
Okay, good. And then lastly, to the landscaping, Andrew, I know you said that you would, you could work with staff and get some type of plan, but I personally, and I think Commissioner Powers is thinking the same thing, is that I'd like to see that plan before it goes in. so we know what's being put in there, and we have some type of idea. I'm not certain that the Park District would have to come back to us, but I would like to see that before we give the okay on that, and this whole thing. When do you think you would start on this? Are
Right
you
now,
looking for next summer to have it done?
looking for the end of this year to have it.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, we're really, I mean, the need just is, like overwhelming. We're looking to have the pickleball courts done this year, but we would do the parking lot next year.
Okay. Cool. All right. And back to Commissioner Zangara, you just have 4-foot high fences on the one side. Why did you decide to go with the lower ones? And I see this, you use this as an example because those are, looks like smaller fences. Or no, actually, those actually look a little bit higher if you look in relation. Why just 4 foot?
Well, the reason was we didn't want to make it feel like you were fenced in, like almost like, I know tennis courts do it for a specific reason, but we felt with pickleball, we didn't need to do it for that reason. And
Because we can't hit it over 8-foot fence, 4-foot
You
fence anyway?
typically don't. If you do, it doesn't go very far. And so we had gaps in the fence. And we just didn't want to give it this kind of closed-in look. And the reason primarily we did it on the north and the south is because that's the area where, if you're hitting it that way,
Right.
it's going to go a little bit further. We didn't want it to go into a neighbor's yard. We also wanted to be able to provide the fence with the windscreen to provide some additional screening.
Sure. I just think and I realize what you're saying, that you don't want to be fenced in, but it would just seem to me to deter anybody going onto it when you're not using it. An 8-foot fence would be more appropriate, but if that's how you feel you want to do it, I'm okay with it. Any other questions, Commissioner Powers?
I have one quick one. Do you have any intention of putting like one trash receptacle up by the pickleball courts at all, or just leave it?
No, we'd put, I didn't show it in the drawing, but typically when we have benches, we'd add a trash receptacle and recycling there too.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Mr. Jennings?
Have 3 conditions of approval based on this discussion. Number 1, that the driveway to the west of the proposed pickleball courts shall be posted as restricted access, fire lane or similar. Number 2, the petitioner shall provide documentation of an MWRD waiver or approval prior to construction. And number 3, the petitioner provide a more detailed landscape plan prior to planting.
Great, thank you. Do you have to bring your own equipment, or do you rent the pickleball rackets and balls?
If you have your own equipment, you bring it. If you don't, we have it for you, but you don't pay for the rental. It's all part of your, your
Part of
fee
your
to play.
fee.
Yeah.
Okay, great, sounds great. So your motion.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Dorban, second by Commissioner Johnson. Mr. Secretary.
Commissioner Dorban.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson is a yes. Commissioner Powers.
Yes.
Commissioner Steilen.
Abstain.
Commissioner Vito.
Yes.
Commissioner Zangara.
Yes.
And Chairman Rufano.
Yes. Good luck.
Great, thank you.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, this is a minor site plan review, so that is the final approval on this particular action, subject to the conditions.
So the bulldozers that you have right now, you can turn them on.
Yeah, crank them up.
Crank them up.
BYOPPR.
For an addition.
Different meanings, different places.
Okay.
Employee discount.
Calling docket number 2014-13, continued from July 17, 2014, public hearing, Russian School of Mathematics, 125 North Milwaukee Avenue, special use site plan approval for a recreation and instruction facility. Mr. Jennings?
Thank you. This item was opened at the public hearing on July 17th, I believe. There were a few questions based on the staff review, questions from the commission. The petitioner has been working on those items with the staff and with the landlord. We have received revised plans, which you have in your packet, essentially addressing each of those issues one by one. The petitioner has reduced the total capacity, provided an additional restroom, worked with the landlord to get confirmation. The landlord is willing to allow dedication of short-term parking, as well as restricting left turn access during peak hours. Staff, the Village of Wheeling was also asked to contact IDOT. We did get confirmation from IDOT. Not only will they agree to signage on Milwaukee Avenue restricting drop-offs, IDOT has indicated that they will in fact install those signs for us. So at this point, the plans have been revised to address the comments from staff, the concerns of staff, and with that, I'd like to open it to the petitioner to answer your questions.
Maybe Mr. Rifkin, would you like to add more to what Mr. Jennings said, describe what you're going to be, the changes that you've done?
No, I think Mr. Jennings has covered it very well. The site owners have graciously agreed to be here as well to answer any questions around the site itself.
Okay.
In general, we decreased the occupancy to, I think, where there were questions from Mr. Antor last time around the spacing between desks and all of that. So I think we're now in compliance with the fire department. We proposed that if required, we can install a third bathroom. We're looking if, but if that's required, we're willing to install it. We've provided a site plan, and again, the site owner has agreed to allow for 10 spaces for 15-minute drop-offs. We've also additionally done parking counts, just to sanity check our estimation, and from what we see, there's more than sufficient parking for our use. There's about 30 spaces at minimum, and for our heavy peak periods, there's generally about 40 free spaces available, with 10 dedicated drop-off spaces, and with our classes segmented, so no more than 10 cars arrive at a time. With carpooling, I expect even less. I think we should be, very conservatively, we should still have plenty of space available. I know that staff recommended there'd be no left-hand turn. That I think the site owner has been amenable to that. It's really a question of whether it's required. But all the conditions that I'm aware of, we've tried to address or mitigate. If there are others, I'm happy to hear them. But
Thank you. Let's start with Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. I appreciate the changes you've made. My question is more to Mr. Antor to explain the difference in the occupancies.
Okay.
In that write-up.
Okay. The occupancy load normally is calculated based on the use of the occupancy, like an educational or assembly use group, like a restaurant or a business use group. And there is a table in the building and fire prevention codes that provides the information to make that determination. And roughly it's based on either the gross or the net square footage divided by a factor. And the use here is an educational use, even though it's a B use group occupancy. The rooms are classrooms, so you would use the educational, which is 20 square foot per person. So if you had a 100 square foot room, you would divide it by 20, and that would give you your occupancy load. However, there is another section in the code that allows for an increased occupancy load provided you meet all the other code requirements in the various sections of the code.
Okay.
So what the petitioner has done, and that was what his point was last time, is that they were applying that section of the code, but didn't really tell us up front about it, I guess. And they have provided all of that information. They have provided the appropriate widths between the aisles and between the seating areas. And if you compared the last memo and this one, they both were kind of similar format, and this one showed the occupant load based on the 20 square foot per person, and then it showed what the petitioner is requesting, and then stated that they were in compliance with the amended section for occupancy load. And if you look at the numbers between this time and last time, their proposal is greater than the square footage requirement, but it is not to the level that it was last time. It's a little bit less, but it does meet all the other items in that section of the code.
Okay, thank you.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Sort of, yeah. You need
Well-
more?
Since you're asking the question, normally I don't try to interrupt, but I will this time. On what is confusing to me, Ron, is that on page 31, well, which in our form, yeah, it's probably page 2 of your document, number
Okay.
3.
Correct.
Okay, and what's confusing me are the statements, and I'll just use A as the one. Classroom 1 shows occupancy of 11, and the estimated code allowable occupancy is 10, based upon section 1004.1.2 of the building code. Then the next sentence is, the proposed occupancy load complies with the maximum allowable floor space contained in section
Okay,
1004.2 of the building code fire prevention codes.
sure. And that goes back to what I was
Right.
discussing with Commissioner Johnson, and basically I'll try and restate it based on the paragraph that I had written. The petitioner was showing, in this case, an occupancy of 11,
Right.
based on their chairs and whatnot. However, the section 1004.12, when that's the one where you divide it by the square footage, and that comes up to 10 occupants and not the 11.
Okay.
And then the last statement, the petitioner's proposed occupancy load of 11 complies with the maximum allowable floor space under section 1004.2, which is the section that refers to you are allowed to increase the occupancy load over that
Over the
previous
10.
set of numbers in that other code section, but you cannot, which isn't in here, you cannot increase that more than no less than 7 square feet per person, which they meet all those requirements.
Wow.
There are two calculations. There's a standard and an alternate. To be eligible for the alternate, you have to meet criteria, and Mr. Arantor is saying that they met all the criteria to be eligible for the alternate ratio. Is that paraphrasing?
That would be a better
What's an
paraphrase.
example of that other criteria? Just.
Well, you have to meet the spacing between aisles. In other words, the aisles have to be 36 inches. Last time the petitioner had 24-inch aisles. Certain amount of space between the chairs. In a much larger setting, you may need 2 doorways to exit the space, depending on how high your occupant load got. How wide the doorways have to be. There's a way to calculate the minimum required width of the opening between the doors, and usually it's no less than 36 inches wide. So when you add all those things together, but then again, the last caveat in that whole section of the code is it can't be more than 7 square feet per person. So again, once you divide that space available, if it came down to 5 square feet per person in the modified criteria, then you could not do that.
But the first section starts out at 20, you said?
The average for educational use group for classroom use is 20 square feet per person.
But this, you can knock
So
it down.
theoretically, if they have all of the, enough space and all the other factors, which they probably won't in this size of space, they could get down to a maximum of 7 square feet per person.
Interesting.
And again, there are other different square footage requirements in other sections
Right.
and other uses.
Okay, thank you.
And just to be clear, we're not anywhere close to the 7 square foot. We're much closer
Yeah.
to 20, and we've revised closer to that.
Yeah, he is correct.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. That's really the only thing I had.
Commissioner Steinle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, from my previous comments on this document, I really don't think that this is a good use to be used at this particular location. And I'm also concerned that the dates on the items in the docket itself are in some cases incorrectly stated in the staff report, and in other cases, the dates don't exist on the attached drawings. So, Andrew, before we do anything, can we get the dates straightened out? The site plan date on the floor plan is 7/23/2014, and you have it as 8/6/2014. And the parking plan and parking policy attachments don't have any receive stamp or receive dates on them. So I just want to make sure that the items don't get changed and that what we're voting on is indeed what we're voting on. I'm also, I'm glad you went over those numbers because I was really confused on the fire department calculations, but I'm also concerned about on page 3, item number 4, talks about whether the door to Milwaukee Avenue is going to be there or not, and it appears on the site plan that is in our packet, there does not appear to be any door going to Milwaukee Avenue, and what you really don't explain what impact that has on any of the occupancy calculations. So is a door required or not required? Does it change the occupancy?
In their case, the total occupancy load of the tenant space would require a maximum of 2 exits, and the door width, I don't recall exactly what it was, but it would exceed, or it would be less than the 2 36-inch doors, I believe, that are still left. The third doorway, which is it currently exists in the building, outside of the washrooms facing Milwaukee Avenue. So what I was looking for is a clarification if it was just something they missed on their drawings and that they were going to keep it, or if it was something that they intended to remove and just install glass. One of the reasons it could have potentially been a question is that if they do not provide the door, they are creating a dead-end corridor coming from the lobby past the classrooms and ending in the classrooms. In a dead-end corridor situation, you are limited to a maximum of 20 feet of a dead-end corridor, and this corridor exceeds that 20 feet limit. However, there is an exception in the code, which in a fully sprinklered building allows you to go to 50 feet for a dead-end corridor, and they fall under that distance.
Okay, so
Wait, hold on.
do they need the door or don't they need the
They
door?
do not need the door by the code, but it's just a question of what they plan on doing with it.
Okay.
The door is.
Sir, if you could just, if you're going to, and please don't want you to speak, but you weren't at the last meeting, so I just need to swear you in if you're going to speak.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, that's fine. If you'd raise your hand, do you swear the testimony you give tonight to be the truth?
I do.
And could you just give your name and business address into the microphone so we have it recorded?
Sam Greco, 2687 Waukegan Avenue in Highland Park.
Great. Now you can,
Okay, I'm sorry.
no, that's quite all
The
right.
door is still there, it just did get drawn for some reason. It's not going to be removed, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 5 doors, 5 double doors in that space.
Actually, the double doors count as one door in the eyes of the code. It's just how wide they are.
Okay, yeah, but there is 5 doors. That
And
one was never intended to be removed.
So actually, and it's a mistake on the drawing, so the doors are there, they're going to be based
If you
on-
could speak into the
Sorry
microphone.
about that. So I think it's based on the feedback from you, Commissioner Stellon, that we added an extra egress last time. We had 3 egress points. And the concern was that egress onto Milwaukee Avenue was not as safe as the other 2. So the feedback, we took that feedback and basically said these 2 doors are going to be locked at all times. We don't need them for occupancy. They create more of a danger than a help.
correct, they would be
So we'll
able,
keep them.
they would be able to leave the doorways there, leave them locked as long as they're able to unlock them. They could actually probably even take the locks off as long as they clearly identified that they were not exits.
Interesting. Mr. Stalin, if you want to.
Well, I guess I'm just a little confused. If you have doors in a building, then the doors probably ought to be on the plan that we're seeing. And if you're not going to use the doors, or you're going to lock them or block them or whatever, and they're not going to be on the plan, we probably ought to make sure that they don't look like doors so they don't get misinterpreted as doors, people trying to get out of them, in an emergency situation, and they're not doors. So, if they're not going to be used as doors, they ought to be replaced to look like the rest of the windows or glass or whatever in the building. That would be my concern for safety purposes, that, if you have a door there and it's locked or chained or whatever, and there's a fire or something and people are trying to get out of the doors, that's because they look like doors. I don't think that's correct, so.
The final product.
They should be one way or the other. Either make them a door and make them usable as an emergency exit. You can mark them as emergency only, but if they're not a door,
The final end is whatever this gentleman wants to do. If he wants them unlocked, if he wants them locked, if he wants the handles, we'll do whatever.
well,
The doors will be there, and if he wants them so that they operate, they'll operate. If he wants them so the handles, we'll do whatever he wants.
Again, this is a very common situation in like strip malls, as tenant spaces change when one tenant comes in and takes over 2 or 3 tenant spaces. They have a lot of extra doors that were originally designed in the building. It's very common that they will remove the identification that they are an exit, but the physical doors actually will remain there. But they would have the hardware on them, like a thumb turn latch, that they're still required to have, and they would still be accessible during an emergency, but they would not be used as a doorway normally.
okay, so that they will be doors, they will be able to be opened. I mean, they're children that we're talking about, right? They don't know the rules and the regulations of what's a door and what's not a door, especially in an emergency situation. They see a door because they go to the washrooms that are there all the time, right? If it's a door, it needs to be usable by my thoughts. And if it is going to be usable as a door, then it ought to be shown on the site plan, so.
We'll make sure.
I think the point that the petitioner, actually the property owner is making is that the door is going to be there. The hardware would be appropriate, as I believe it already is today, to allow people to exit. but they just not would be using it on a regular basis, and that in an emergency, the occupants would in fact be able to use it if need be.
Exactly.
That's my only concern, Andrew. If we could somehow get your dated stamp on the other pages of the handout, I would appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Zangara.
Well, I just think everything that was just said about the dead-end corridor, because I looked that up over the week and all the changes, and, you know, I've dealt with the retail, so I understand the closing the door, leaving it there. I personally would like it there, just so it's there. But otherwise, everything else has been answered. You guys just covered what I was going to talk about, so I really have nothing.
Thank you. Commissioner Dorban.
Thank you. The discussion came up about children using this door or not using this door. Are you going to be conducting fire drills so the children are aware of what doors they should be exiting out in case of an emergency?
So, well, we generally don't. We're not a full-time school. Children are generally with us for about an hour, hour and a half, maximum of 2 hours. They're under the supervision of a teacher at all times. So at no point would children try to be running out of a classroom by themselves. We've never had a requirement for fire drills. Our staff is trained on how to exit, and there's generally posters telling them how to exit. But the whole space is 2,800 square feet with basically, if we're leaving that door with 3 exits, I don't think egress will be difficult for this space.
Maybe that's a question for the fire department. Is that
Based on the use group or the type of occupancy, they would not be required to have regular fire drills, such as other types of occupancies. It sounds like the petitioner is covering it with the fact that the staff is aware of what to do and to assist the students or the business participants. And again, it's no different than a lot of other types of occupancies where children are left unattended, such as the Park District facility as one as an example, a church, even though that would be an assembly use group, but there are other types of occupancies where children and groups are left and they don't do regular fire drills.
okay? Thank you. I'm still a little confused about the number of students that are acceptable. Your report, if I did my calculations right, says 53. You're asking for 60. Is the 60 an acceptable number?
Yes,
I guess that.
the place, again, similar to one of Commissioner Stylin's questions, the petitioner was talking specifically about students, but yet you have instructional staff, the principal, the facility, and those are still occupants within a facility. So my numbers specifically relate to the total number of occupants that are allowed and not the students. So that's where that discrepancy would come from.
So what would be the total, I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. What would be the total number of occupants, students and staff, that would be allowed in that facility? Because I see numbers floating around.
Right.
I mean, like 65, 60, 53. I'm just kind of confused.
Unfortunately, I didn't break it out that way. We can provide that if you'd like at a later date total, but I think trying to see if I had something easily.
What's the maximum size of your staff in this location?
It's 1 per classroom.
We could have 1 per, yeah, I'm sorry.
1 per classroom plus the
Possibly 1
principal?
per office, so 66 is the maximum total that we're looking at. Again, we're going to open much smaller than that, so we're not going to get to those numbers for at least 2 to 3 years.
I hope you are. I guess that's my I'm thinking of your success and thinking that
Thank you.
that's the end result, and I
That
just
is.
want to make sure we're all singing out of the same hymnal here and making sure we're all counting the same number of people that are
As an example-
committed in that position or in that facility.
As an example, they're showing classroom 1 with 10 students, and actually the total number of occupants in that classroom would be 11, 10 plus the 1 instructor. So if you were to take their numbers, add 1 to them, so you'd have 11 in classroom 1, 11 in classroom 2,
I got 65, I did that too. I did the math.
13 in classroom 3, 15 in classroom 4, and 15 in classroom 5, plus 1 for the instructor, or the reception, and 1 for the principal's office. That would be the total for that. And that does not take into account parents, which would also be part of the occupants, total occupancy load of the structure for the waiting area. Those are the total number of students in the classrooms.
The 65 total, that includes the instructor in each classroom, is that right? Or is that, are you saying that's?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
65 is the
Okay.
total number of students and the instructors.
Okay.
But
So
then you would have, 2 more for the principal and the front desk receptionist. And then if you add the other areas that haven't been talked about, the waiting area, because the parents are coming, the actual total occupancy load of the structure is higher than that. But the petitioner has consistently talked in the student occupant load only, and that's what they've been looking at. That's what's driving their need for their business model, is that they have to have 60 students.
I guess my question then goes to Andrew. Do we have to have a total anticipated body count? Or is that not, I don't know how else to
use the
I don't know how else
term,
to
but
count.
I think that, I think what we're looking for is the capacity as it relates to 2 different things. One is related to the safe egress.
Correct.
And the other is capacity in terms of the number of visitors that are going to be there, parking, drop-off, et cetera. What we're concerned about chiefly in the special use is going to be the impact on the site, which is the students and staff translate into a certain number of cars. And I think what we're trying to get to is that number, basically the 60 students plus the staff, and it's assumed that a certain number of cars will result from that number. So right now it's listed as the student staff occupancy is limited to 60 students plus 6 staff, as shown on the revised submittals. And I believe it's based on that, the fire department will be posting a maximum occupancy for the lobby area. I would assume you'd break out the lobby area or something. So it's not uncommon during the construction process.
Correct.
To set a room occupancy and then post that on the wall.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
Commissioner Vito.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks. We threw a lot at you at the last meeting, and I think you kind of complied in spades and came back with everything that we requested. I like the idea a lot. I think that's a good spot for it. I think you picked a good demographic. And I'm with my fellow commissioner. I hope you pack that in pretty quickly and stay in business and hopefully draw some more people to start leasing in that area, because it's a nice area that unfortunately is a little under-occupied right now. So thank you. I like the idea.
Thank you. Commissioner Powers.
Thanks. Can you review for me again hours of operation?
Sure. So we are purely after school, so nominally we open at 3:30, though as I look at our schedule for next year, it's 4 o'clock. It depends when schools get out, so it looks like 3:30 to 4 is generally when our classes open. On a weekday, they'll run till about 8 p.m. On a weekend, and again, if we get full, we'll take Saturday or Sunday. We'll start at 9 a.m. and go to at a maximum of, say, 5 p.m.
Okay, and then how many classes do you actually run per day? Like, I mean, you have five classrooms. I mean, I assume eventually the intent is to run all 5 classrooms at one time? And then let's say, how long is a class? So if I'm going from, let's say, 4 to 8, how is that being rotated? Is it like an hour-and-a-half class? So I'm rotating, let's say, 75 students twice every day? Or, to kind of judge how busy that's going to be?
On a weekday, I think that each classroom is going to get 1, maybe 2 uses max.
Okay.
Just because if you open at 4, there's, you might be able to fit in 2 uses if you have parents that are committed. So generally the way it would work is, so a single classroom, again, all of our classes are about 1 to 2 hours, so a single classroom would start, say 3:45, it would be busy till 5:45, then there'd be a 10-minute break or whatever. And again, potentially something at 6 to 8 again.
Okay.
The way we do it is we try to offset every class so that there's not 60 cars coming in at one time because we don't have staff that can accommodate that. We try to put in 10, 15-minute breaks in between, so one class will start at 3:30, the next one at 3:40 or 3:45, next one at 4, so on and so forth.
Okay.
And then as that classroom fills, so as it gets its 1.5, 2 hours, if there's demand, we might have another class that day. Weekends were a little bit more so that each classroom on a weekend might get 3.
Okay. The turnaround for the cars, that's gone, is that right?
Yeah, there's no, we couldn't see a good radius to do that. Instead, what we're asking is every parent to pull in. It's good for them to walk their child into the class anyway. But yes, we took that out.
And that was that replaced by the 15-minute parking?
Yes.
Okay.
We're basically providing dedicated parking where they can stop, bring their child to class, our staff will meet them, and then we'll gently encourage them to go shopping.
And the no left turn, was that when you exit the property, no left turn going southbound on Milwaukee Avenue, but you'd be able to make a left turn going into the property if you were going southbound? So if I was going southbound on Milwaukee, I could make a left turn in there, but if I were exiting the property, I could not turn left and go south. Is that correct?
Yes, that was actually a staff sorry about that. That was actually, that's much better. That was actually, I get it now. That was a staff recommendation, so Andrew can probably.
Sure, what we're looking at, and I don't know if any of the photographs are going to help us here, but in this scenario, you're looking at this driveway here. The traffic on southbound Milwaukee Avenue backs up past this site.
Yep.
Essentially every red light in peak hours. Because of the high likelihood of incoming traffic during those peak hours, the left turners entering the site would cross the path of left turners exiting the site. The restriction of left turners into the site would not be good for this business. It would basically prevent any convenient access from the north. So the alternative to keep the 2 cars from crossing each other's path, they would cross each other's path either in northbound Milwaukee or in the center. So our suggestion was to avoid that conflict and get people to clear the driveway, just restrict people from turning left. And as Mr. Rifkin said, they have repeat business. Their parents are trainable to exiting and dealing with a restriction like that.
Okay, thanks, that clarifies it. What I got? If you go back to, let's say, the west-facing part of the building that faces the planter, can you bring up that picture? Nope, that one. So if I look at the site plan, and this goes to the doors again, is this to say that as looking at this picture here, that the door on the left, is that going to be in a classroom? Is that what, basically it's going to be locked and in a classroom, is that correct?
One of the 4 doors, yes, is inside a classroom.
No, he's talking about that one. That one, the one on the left there is going to be used to go in and out. The one on the right will be in a class.
It's in classroom too.
Now I'm lost, because you have one single entrance on the floor plan on the west side, so is it one of these 2 doors? Is that what we're talking about here?
They're actually, I apologize. So
This is the east side of the building facing the parking lot.
Oh.
This is the north
right.
side of the unit?
Right, I'm sorry, the north side. So on the north side, it looked like on the plan, there was one, it showed one door. At the top there, is that right? That's the west side. It shows one door, but I'm seeing two doors when I look at the picture. So I'm asking, is the door closest to Milwaukee Avenue, is that one going to be shut down, or is only going to be one door in there? So one set of the two doors will be functional, and the other one will be in a classroom? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yes.
Okay.
There are currently 4 doors in the properties. Our architects, when they drew it, did not label the ones that we're not using, but in
Okay.
fact, there are 2 doors that will essentially be locked. The one is in classroom 2, and one is next to the bathrooms.
Okay, so you'll have some signage on the door that says, just, this is not an exit, go to this door, around the corner, whatever.
We expect it to be less of a problem in classroom 2, just because it's inside a classroom, but it'll be the same as Ron indicated for the other door. Those
Okay.
doors are not going to be usable, they're not going to be everyday use.
Okay. I have a little bit of concern on the use also. I'm really not sure, and even though the center doesn't seem to be that utilized right now, once it does, I don't know, that's a lot of traffic going in and out of that site for a couple hours, and I'm a little bit concerned about that. And that's really all I have to say.
Well, the hours, half the hours that they are open, most of the other stores are.
In the
closed.
microphone,
You know
sir?
that. So
Could you speak into the microphone?
the other uses that are there, I think at 5 o'clock, they're all gone except for one, which is the nail salon. I don't know if that helps at all.
Okay.
The whole parking lot will almost be empty.
Okay.
That's pretty evident in the traffic counts we submitted as well. We looked heavily at what our overlap would look like. In our busiest times of the weekends, because that's when parents are free. So we'll get, a classroom will get one use ideally on the weekday, but on the weekend, we can turn around a couple times, and that plaza is not heavily utilized on Saturday or Sunday at all.
I think everybody is closed on Sunday except for him.
Yeah.
He will be the only one open.
But meanwhile, that shopping area around the plaza is actually heavily, it's very alive in the weekends. I think that our uses will benefit the surrounding area fairly well, because our parents are, I think it would overlap what they do anyway. They shop on the weekends while they drop their kids off. So I think it's an ideal mix in terms of the surrounding plaza. But we looked very heavily at the overlap of our businesses, because if there's not enough parking, our parents are going to be frustrated as well. So that's one of the core things we look at when we look at site selection.
I think at the beginning of this, a comment was made, and I'm not sure if it was you, Ms. Rifkin, or Mr. Jennings, about the signage, no left turn. I assume that's going to go in. I think that's something that we would want to see on the property, saying no left turn. Do we restrict that, no left turn ever, or no left turn between these hours?
The way it's written right now is between the hours of 3:30 PM and 6 PM on weekdays.
Okay.
And it's specifically onto Milwaukee Avenue.
Personally, I think it's a good use. I mean, is it retail? No, it's not, but I'm hoping that this could generate maybe retail in the other pieces of your property, maybe a small restaurant or something that this is going to get a lot of use, evenings and weekends, so. Right, exactly. My only concern, and it's more towards the drawings that we're not depicting, for instance, on this drawing here, there's a door that Commissioner Powers talked about that's not displayed here. Is that if we send this to the board, is that something that we need to change? Is it before we send it to the board?
Can we just mark it for now?
What I've written, and I just kind of tweaked here, The condition is that the unused Milwaukee Avenue door and courtyard door may remain, but must be identified on the plan and modified to indicate that they're an emergency exit only.
I'll just point out that it is drawn differently where the doors are on the drawing,
Yeah,
but it's drawn as closed doors.
yes, there are two,
The hinges are there.
right.
Oh, I didn't know, see, I was looking at the one immediately to the left of that as the door, but there,
Yeah, it's
it
that.
is marked.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
It's just
marked.
marked as closed.
Probably a note would help, but
Right.
I would suggest then identified on the plans and modified to indicate that they are emergency exit.
They are there.
All right. If there are no other questions, anyone? Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Vito, seconded by Commissioner Johnson. Mr. Secretary?
Prior to reading the roll
Oh,
call.
I'm
if I could
sorry.
just-
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I had,
I was pretty good the
One
whole night.
condition.
I was pretty good the whole night asking you for the conditions, and the very last one, I messed it up.
so to Commissioner Vito and Commissioner Johnson.
Right.
In particular, who made and seconded, the conditions that we have right now on that motion are, number one, petitioner and landlord dedicate 10 short-term parking stalls as shown on the site plan dated August 6th, 2014. Number two, that the student staff capacity is limited to 60 students plus 6 staff as shown on the revised submittals dated 8/6/2014. Number three, the petitioner work with the landlord to install a sign restricting left turns onto Milwaukee Avenue between the hours of 3:30 PM and 6 PM on weekdays. And number four, the unused Milwaukee Avenue door and courtyard door may remain, but must be identified on the plans and modified to indicate that they are for emergency exit only.
I think your count is off, though. 60 students, 6 staff, and then I heard a receptionist, so.
No.
Should be,
So 5 teachers, 1 receptionist, that makes 6 staff.
And
What about-
then
what about the
principal? What
principal?
about your
Is
principal?
one of the teachers.
Oh, okay. Great,
We're happy with 66. Very
okay. Good. Principal's
that's
got to work
acceptable?
for money, then.
To Commissioner Vito and Commissioner Johnson, those conditions are acceptable.
Right.
Right.
Commissioner Johnson? Mr. Secretary, you ready to?
Yes. Commissioner Vito?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson is a yes. Commissioner Doorband?
Yes.
Commissioner Powers?
No.
Commissioner Stylin?
No.
Commissioner Zangara?
Yes.
And Chairman Rafato?
Yes. It did pass, but I will ask the commissioners that voted no as to why they voted no. Commissioner Powers?
I feel that center is for retail, and this is not a retail use, and I'm concerned about the amount of traffic going through that area.
Can you,
I think there would be better spots in the village that would be more suitable for that type of use.
can you attribute that to one of the special uses?
Number two, I think it alters the essential character going, that character being retail, and that's, my feeling is that's not a retail use. And then number three, location and size, again, traffic at certain times, I feel that could, hinder what the intent, it makes it a more intense use.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Stalin?
Special use standards number 1 and 2.
Okay, great. One is special use is necessary for public convenience of the proposed location. And you said 2, Commissioner Stalin?
Yes.
State how the special use will not alter the essential character, which is what Commissioner Powers talked about. But this is past this board, we're recommending board, and it now goes to the village board.
We'll be in touch with you regarding the date of that review and how, as we discussed before, how you'd like to represent it, that if the principal would attend, et cetera. The decision sheet will be available for you to sign. I do need a motion to close on that one.
Motion to close?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Approval of minutes of July 10th, 2014.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye.
Do we hear anything over there? Do we hear yeses and nos on the,
Aye.
aye? Commissioner Durbin? Oh, okay, I'm sorry, and I abstain. So it's 5-2, 4-2. And the approval of minutes of July 17th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstains?
Abstain.
One abstain. Thank you. Other business, Mr. Jennings, Neighborhood Streetscape Initiative.
Thank you.
It's hard to say fast.
I'm going to go up front so I can.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. The village president and the board of trustees at the last board meeting in July asked the plan commission and the staff to work together to try to locate some village-owned property that could be utilized to expand access to open space around the residential areas of the village. The request was to two-part, essentially, find a series of locations geographically distributed, and then come up with, in conjunction with the Public Works and Capital Improvements divisions, a placeholder type budget. The Plan Commission role in this is more on the location and design. And so what we've prepared thus far to open up this discussion, and again, I want to be clear, this is opening the discussion. We're not here as the staff to prescribe anything at this point and say that this is by any means our final recommendation. What we've got are some of the preliminary research to share with you, and hope to take some direction back so that the next time we come in front of you, we can continue on productively with this discussion. So with that, what I'd like to go over real briefly, we tried to come up first with the basic design. So we started off with the area that leads into the park, Childerley Park on McHenry Road. From the neighborhood side, there's a small seating area, gathering place. The residents of this particular block would have access to this small seating area. So we looked at this essentially from a scale. How much space do you need to provide a modest amount of open space where people could sit down, meet with one another, have a cup of coffee, read the newspaper, sit with their dog for a minute on a nice day, and perhaps chat with a neighbor or something. So we use this as total square footage of paved space, how many benches, access to garbage cans, generally speaking, how much pavement is here, so that we can come up with an idea of what we needed. We then started looking, after this, we started looking at looking at the space that's available to us, which led us to what you saw in the memo, which is this would probably be our standard model. We'd still use that as a standard model, but we tried to open it up to the possibility that there'd be other size options, a much smaller version and a larger version. I'll get into that in a little bit, and why we did that, which you'll see on this. So to help guide this, and again, guide, not prescribe, to guide this, we tried to do a little bit of analysis with the GIS division to determine which locations, which residential areas in Wheeling, and this is a little bit washed out, but the white here, you're familiar with, this is the airport, so this would be Hints across here, and then Dundee up here, Elmhurst coming down. So what we try to figure out, are there particular residential areas that if we're able to locate properties or other land that's available to us, if we're able to locate this, can we find locations that would also help to provide some open space in neighborhoods that have less access to open space? So we analyze access to open space two ways, by trying to find public parks, private parks that are inside developments, park space at school that may be available on a weekend type basis. So we took from that a quarter-mile radius, generally recognized as easier walking distance, and then applied on top of that some just knowledge of how these neighborhoods connect. Some of the neighborhoods, although they're within a quarter-mile radius, do not actually connect. So we tried to tweak the map based on just a knowledge of where the streets actually do go through or don't go through. So with that, what we found, we added to that a layer of parcels that we own. I want to be clear about what these are. These are the village-owned parcels, not necessarily street rights-of-way, not, these are the not dedicated right-of-way. So there may be some dedicated right-of-way that is unused, mapped streets that are unimproved. There could be some other land opportunities that are out there that aren't shown on this. There could be some particularly wide rights-of-way where the sidewalk has plenty of space behind it, where some amount of usable gathering space could be added. So what we gained from this was some understanding that the actual parcels that we own are somewhat limited. So what we tried to do to add some flexibility to this and really make sure that we could find a good number of locations was add into that the possibility that there may be some other options available to us beyond the 50-foot wide lot that we looked at leading into Childerley Park. So that kind of led to the possibility of the scaled down version, which would be sort of tacked on to a sidewalk, and then the larger version, which would be more sort of a corner feature, using the space and general layout of something like you'd see over at Northgate and Dundee. So with that is kind of where we are. What I'd like to do to further this discussion is just open it up to the commission. And then as you leave here today, thinking about spaces that you're familiar with, we can begin sort of to compile the list and go out and start really looking at the feasibility of some locations, and then hopefully the next time we all meet on this project, have options, a few that might be appropriate for the Childerley Park entryway style, some that might be appropriate for the very scaled down couple of benches by themselves, and then some that might be more appropriate for the corner location. So with that, I'd like to just open up to the commission.
I have one question. The open space is the school in yellow. Is that schools with parks? Because I noticed there's a big high school that wasn't put on that map.
So the schools, what I did with the schools, we can certainly put the high school back on, but what I did with the schools was I tried to find some that sort of connected to the neighborhoods. The high school has limited connection to the neighborhood. It's fenced on a few sides, and the parts that you can get into, not necessarily designed for use by the public.
One reason I brought that up is because you had that little parcel right next to it there that I kind of see. that going there and knowing how many people park there when kids are playing high school, they tend to, people that can't walk from the high school parking lot all the way to that field tend to park in that neighborhood. That neighborhood, definitely has potential. And that's why I brought that up to school. That's kind of the reason why.
That parcel, I believe, is the pump facility. There is, we're really trying to be as open-minded as possible about this. We don't want to rule anything out yet. There are parcels like that if you actually look at the design of that parcel, there may well be enough space to add some meaningful, usable space in a place that's otherwise not usable. Okay. So that certainly is the type of, knowledge of these neighborhoods, and what exactly, we have a few places that we have buried equipment on parcels that we have. Where they are located oftentimes is, as it turned out, close to a lot of other usable open space. So, like I said at the beginning, we're trying to find sort of the balance of hopefully in the end we have some that do scatter and provide a location that is otherwise has a little bit less open space near it.
Yeah, Andrew, at the risk of sounding a little ignorant on what we're looking to do, like take where Commissioner Zangara and I live in Ridgefield there's, the green spot, there's the neighborhood park. It's kind of like where we all meet, the ones of us that have kids. Like, what are we trying to do to enhance that as a meeting place? I'm just kind of trying to understand what the goal is.
Well, you have taking your neighborhood, taking Lexington, taking some of the subdivisions were designed with open space inside them. For those that have an established gathering place, maybe the extent of it would be to work on a minor improvement. If there's no place to sit down, maybe we look for a place to sit down. If there's no garbage can, just a small scale improvement to take some space that you may be able to stand in it, it may be attractive, it may have a pond, it may, beyond that, not be usable.
I see.
So we're trying to find, a variety. Like I said, some of the locations that we looked at, though, we started taking them off because Lexington, for example, has a couple of different locations where you can already do this. So although it wasn't public, it's certainly public enough that everybody who lives in walking distance won't have any trouble getting to it. There was, let me think of who else we originally had to go visit their open space. Cedar Run, we had to go.
Why did you take Lexington off again?
The neighborhood itself had open spaces that are already usable inside it. They don't show up as parks. So when we looked at those, the open space that the residents had access to, it didn't seem necessary to add open space inside it, to add additional access inside it. Again, I mean, we're open to any suggestion at this point. Our intention is to, as you all leave here and go over the next week or so, as sites occur to you within mind, corner, we're trying to not necessarily locate directly inside a neighborhood, perhaps on the perimeter. One of the things that we're concerned about is, you may have, some neighbors may not necessarily want usable open space directly next to their house if it hasn't been there. So we're trying to be sensitive to that as well, making it accessible but also not a burden to anyone.
But that's one of the niceties, I think, of this concept, right? That you can get the neighbors involved and as part of our process, offer the neighbors a forum to like or dislike, voice their opinions on what could happen and what they might like to see.
We've sort of tossed around a couple different ideas. One of the ideas has been sort of opening it up to request. Commissioner Dorban actually sent us a concept of something that we had been talking about is, maybe it's just, we have a program, and I think I
sent them to everybody too. Those came from Cedarburg, Wisconsin, and I thought it was kind of interesting because obviously they're dedicated to specific people. So, maybe there's a way of offsetting a little cost there. But it was an interesting idea as I walked through, and then I had also sent you a picture of a landscape around a sign, which I thought was pretty interesting as well. We're always looking for signs that we like and signs that we don't like. I just thought that one was kind of neat. But I thought this idea was kind of interesting to, and then the other thing is the library has bricks, is that something we can think about too? Or is that not something that the trustees had in mind?
I don't think, I don't want to speak for the trustees, but I don't think that the intention was necessarily to leave out the possibility of creative solutions for this. So I think that the idea of maybe there's something that the village does to establish a few locations, but then the possibility, we can of course look into the cost and how you go about executing something like this, but the possibility of people being able to request one. If a neighborhood has, some of the neighborhoods have common space that is private, it is not the village. They may not necessarily have thought of adding usable benches, that sort of thing, into their private space. But for them, it would function as a public gathering place if they had a program such as this that they could request. And maybe the village role in a case like that is totally different. It's just connecting them with ordering a bench.
Have we thought about areas like, I guess what comes to mind first is the 83 and McHenry right by Creekside there. That whole corner is like in front of their sign. It's kind of like there's nothing there at all. Can we think about something like that, or are we trying to concentrate on only village-owned pieces of property?
I think the preference, I think, to start off with is village-owned.
Which is right across the street in that case.
And yes, we own the land across the street from that. Taking that example, though, of locations where there's open area that's not otherwise usable, you have the possibility of providing a bench. The village of Wheeling could figure out some way to either cost share. We would split the cost with somebody. You could otherwise do it as an easement. Some of our village signs are located in easements. You could find that there may be locations that have underutilized open space that's very accessible to a neighborhood. It just happens to be on property that is owned by somebody. In that case, you might be able to work out an easement for it.
But some subdivisions, though, also have associations that maintain that free space.
Yes.
So we would not run into that, but that could be a potential issue, I would assume.
Yes. Yeah, and we're I think as we've been brainstorming this to try to figure out how to implement it, these are the types of things we've run into, is that, some of the properties that lend themselves to this are going to be private property. The intention of this is really to utilize village property. So if we run out of available village property and street right-of-ways, what are the other options that still achieve the same result? But again, yeah, you do bring up a good point.
Commissioner Stahlen?
Andrew, we have bus stops in town that exist on Parkway side of properties, correct?
On the Parkway side of properties, yes, we have some that exist on the Parkway side.
could we use the parkways of some kind of some properties and face a bench towards the sidewalk, so somebody walking down a sidewalk could sit down at a bench?
So we've looked at two versions of that. The issue that we were running into trying to find locations like that, and there certainly could be some spots where it would work. Parkways tend to have effectively, people have ownership of their parkway in a certain sense. They have a maintenance responsibility of it, and some people feel as though it's theirs. So if you put it in the parkway, you're more likely to run into a situation where it's directly in front of a single person's house. Again, there could be spots where it's not, but we just thought that the likelihood of that happening, where somebody's already got a mow around it, they may feel burdened. Plus, if all their neighbors now are gathering in what they have viewed, hey, I've had to mow this thing for all these years, now there's a bench in it, and I have to sit here, and my neighbors are sitting in front of my house.
Looking in my window.
Right. So we were, yes, we thought about that, but we're also trying to be sensitive to the fact that it could potentially be a burden in that. So we're open to it, I think, not ruling anything out, but trying to find a spot that is less, that doesn't feel as personal as in front of somebody's house.
But I mean,
the same concept that we looked at is maybe there are street right-of-way locations that are, the sidewalk area is maybe 3 feet away from the edge of the street right-of-way. Maybe we've got enough space, maybe there's a dedicated open area, a wetland, something that is just beyond the sidewalk but otherwise not usable. Maybe there's a location like that where we could take advantage of acres of open space that's not really available for use by putting a bench and a couple of trash cans there.
Yeah. But, you know, again, I sent you a couple sites in my subdivision where we have 2 Edward streets that are disjointed from each other, or 2 Vera Lane streets that are disjointed from each other. And I know down on the 5th, 7th, 9th streets, they're disjointed there as well.
12th at North.
That, you know, again, the neighbors may like it, the neighbors may not like it, but those would seem to offer natural, right in the heart of a neighborhood, to offer something. A lot of these other places are all on the periphery because there is no space within a subdivision itself, unless you can find some parkway spot that.
Is the plan to just have trees, or are we talking about some kind of like a perennial garden in these sections? I
think for our purposes, when we looked at this, what we were looking at is a small seating area, perhaps one of the dog waste stations. In the event that it does attract dog walkers, we wanted to make sure that we're being responsible about giving them an option. Trash can, if needed. We looked at an option of bollard lighting to try to make sure that we have that as a cost in case we do it. But limited to a small paved area, a bench, 2 benches, and we were looking at trees. We were trying to be low maintenance. Some of these properties we already mow. The parcels that we own, we may mow them already, and we have landscaping scattered around town that our public works staff has to maintain. So we were trying to be mindful of the need for ongoing maintenance.
I have a question, Andrew. One area I'm thinking about, and it's not village-owned, is like somewhere in the bike path between 83 and Wheeling Road. Like, I could see, like, you have the Village of Wheeling sign there on 83. I mean, you could put a park near the bike path over there somewhere, and, you know, or anywhere in between there. I mean, you could put a park park in that area too. I don't know. I mean, you got a lot of people riding bikes and stuff like that. I mean, they might want to sit down and, I don't know. That's just another idea.
It's an idea.
But you probably run into
something you
comment
can look at on those
issues
is you're inside an easement already, and does that easement allow you to do anything other than what's already there? I mean, but that's what we'd have to look at. There may be spots that are publicly used that, exactly like that, where we can try to do.
So what would our next steps be here? I mean, we've got these spots here identified, red spots. The red areas are village-owned, and I know that's our focus, but if you look at that,
There's not a lot to pick from.
there's really few spots that are
this is, I
village-owned
think-
that we could do
sorry.
something with.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's all right, go ahead now. Yeah.
So we know, we have a decent handle on the parcels that we own. What else we own is a little bit harder to define. So, and I think that's, what we're sort of moving on to this next step is we can look at the viability of each of these. It's the street right-of-way, things that we have access to. We do own them, we do maintain some of them. They are public property. They are not usable open space yet. So things like that, if you're aware of locations, maybe it's something that you live near or you work near and you've seen it and you've thought, well, that'd be nice if we could access that. If you can start to compile some of those types of things, I think it would be useful for us. And we can combine the two things, two types.
So, okay.
And come up with hopefully enough.
Jim, I have just a quick question for Andrew. The village board also talked about partnering with the park district to do some of this stuff. And I'm wondering, there are a lot of schools in our neighborhoods that have open space, on the corners, whatever. London School Jim, down in your field school, right? A bench on the corner entrance to the school or something. Now, yeah, it might be on school property, but if we partnered with, the schools, they seem to have open space, and might be a good place to have.
And I think we should come with those ideas, because I think that from what I gather, reviewing the board meeting where this was discussed, and I think it was the idea of these pocket, I'll call them, these little parks or
gathering areas
were after there was a discussion about the dog parks that the park district was talking about. And then I think President Argyris brought up,
made between them.
brought up, okay, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about, enhancing some of these neighborhoods that have been, don't have any of these open spaces.
They were designed, some of the neighborhoods were designed and developed at a time, and they don't necessarily foster a sense of community. And I think
that's what we're looking for.
I think that the purpose of this as a initiative is to improve both the aesthetics, but also improve the sense of the neighborhood being a place, being a community.
So I think, Commissioner Steinle, I think that's a good idea of partnering, but I think we just have to put it on our list and make the determination. I think our first step is to look at the village-owned property to see if that can be used. And then from there, possibly expand that to the right-of-ways that you're talking about, the Vera Lanes, the Edwards, and whatever, and what Commissioner Powers talked about, and the bike paths. or, so just have those as part of the packet that we present to the village board.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. I think that, you know, the board has asked the commission to work on this project. Part of your working on this could be, here are some ideas for actually implementing it.
Right.
I think that's fair, and they could
And, you know,
direct you to,
And what Commissioner Dorban brought up with the benches, or even the pavers, or plantings. I know in addition to that, there was some cost constraints that we have. Sure. And that's why we decided to go with village property. We own it. So our expense is, we already maintain it, so that's not an additional expense. The expense is in the creation of it. Benches, garbage cans, whatever else we have. Concrete if we have to put down, things like that.
but I think it's also, I think, to achieve the same objective, if the objective is to improve aesthetics and offer the various neighborhoods this opportunity for a sense of community public space that they don't necessarily have, one way of achieving that may be a lower cost access to a bench installation, whereas the Village of Wheeling may be able to order a handful at a lower rate and split the cost with a neighborhood association or something. So
Right.
there may be more than one way to help.
So my suggestion would be we have this map now. Let's take it out and let's look at these areas, site visits if we can. And then also consider other areas, and let's compile that list. And we have a meeting next Thursday, right?
Yes,
And there's only one agenda item on there, right now?
that's correct.
Dunkin' Donuts, right, yeah. So we could have some further discussion at that meeting about this when we come back with ideas. How does that sound?
And I don't know what kind of demographics we need to look at in locating these. Yeah, the Childerley Park entrance is great looking, but I have yet to see anybody sitting on those benches ever.
And I think that's,
A lot of times.
I think that one of the things that we're looking at is distribution. Try to find more than just a couple locations. And I think what we're not leaning toward, but what we've kind of come to the conclusion of is that we're probably going to have to look at more than one way of doing this.
Right. Exactly.
You know, the request of a bench for your neighborhood thing may be a perfectly reasonable solution.
Yeah, then you'd find out who wants them and
Right.
where.
Exactly. Good, okay.
You know, President Argyris talked about, there's a lot of people that walk around our neighborhood, but that's exactly what they're doing. They're walking to stay fit, and they're not walking. I wouldn't get in Jim's way when he and his wife are doing their walk, because they'll just run you right over. You're lucky to get a high.
If you had a beer, though.
Any other questions on this?
No, it's a great idea. Thank you. To other business, Commissioner Powers,
I have nothing, thank you.
Commissioner Vito,
Nothing.
Commissioner Johnson,
Nothing.
Commissioner Steilen,
I don't have anything either.
Commissioner Zangara.
I just had one thing, when we talked about the Chamber Park in the packet, it talked about Pleasant Run when it gave the project description.
Yes, we copied and pasted a substantial portion of that.
Commissioner Dorban,
I only have one thing, that the Taste of the Town will be held on October 9th from 5 to 8. Just want you all to save the date, because it's going to be an exciting, fun evening.
where's it going to be?
Weston.
Pardon me?
Weston? At the Weston?
At the Weston again. And You can check out the Wheeling Prospect Heights website, or the village website, I believe, has a link to the Wheeling Prospect Heights Chamber as well.
Okay, great, thank you. And I just have one thing. I think they finally replaced those bushes by the daycare center,
Yeah.
finally, after months of deliberation, I would guess. Okay. Oh, you know something? I have one other thing.
Your time's up.
I know. You know, we're going to have the PUD coming up, Town Center. You know, based upon what I've heard at the board meetings is that, you know, stuff is going to be coming to us fairly quickly. And we've talked about that loophole in their PUDs about masonry and things like that.
What we're currently planning on is a September 11th hearing. The two sections of the code that I think we would be prepared to make recommendations for amendments on would be the procedure. There are two mentions of a procedural, the timing of how concept PUD and materials work together. And then there's another separate section that lists out the materials themselves, how the material standards for the exterior of a building are determined. So we're looking, I believe we should be ready to publish that for September 11th and have a good set of recommendations for your consideration at that time.
Excellent.
Andrew, in the past, we've, with some of these big projects, we've done workshops. Can we workshop this before we get into the formal?
With the developer?
Yes.
Yeah, our intention is to require that. The current language of the PUD does require workshops. Of course, we had noted before that there are conflicting sections of the code. One part of the code requires it, one part suggests it, but our intention is to have at least one workshop to go over the basic elements of the plan prior to their formal hearing.
Yeah, those workshops are helpful.
Exactly. Great. All right. So your motion to close?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Done. Thank you all.